friends, you've tuned into Reflections, a program sponsored by Paducah Cooperative Ministry, where together we do God's work with human hands. I'm Karen Winkel. I pastor United Church of Paducah, and I'm privileged to sit next to Gregory Waldrop, who's the co-host of this program. Gregory pastors Fountain Avenue United Methodist Church on Fountain Avenue.
That's it.
How are you, Gregory?
Doing well. Glad to be right here with you once again.
Wonderful,
it's
wonderful.
A good gift.
Yeah.
We're glad you're here with us again. We're also especially glad to have our special guest. We have with us a Lowertown artist, Kate Foley. Kate's been here a couple of years now and is in the process of finishing her gallery. As I said before we began this taping, she has really had a resurrection. She has made this house new and whole and strong and even more complete than it was in its best. And we're glad you're here, Kate. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what you have in mind for here, and then we can talk about your art in a little bit.
I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio, and I've lived all over the country. I've lived in California and Boulder, Colorado, and most recently Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. We heard about the Artist Relocation Program from a friend, and she badgered us actually into coming down here, and she kept saying, "You'll want to move there." And finally we took a little trip and a little getaway and came down, and we were here about 30 minutes and fell in love with this town and the people of this town. They're the most friendly, kindest people that I've ever seen. And I still feel that way. I'm more in love with this town every day. So then we looked around and looked for a house, and we were looking at several that day and walked into this. We saw a sweet little Victorian and walked in the front door and immediately could see out the back to the backyard. It only had 3 rooms left, but there was something about it that we just fell in love with, and so we took it on, and almost 2 years later we're still taking it on, but it's coming along. We're very close now to finishing, and it's been a really rewarding experience.
Now, where's the house located?
It's 8th and Harrison, and we have a really good location kind of in the center of Lowertown, and it is such a wonderful community. We're a very close community, lots of support there. It's wonderful to be, as an artist, to be around that many artists. It's just great.
And I know you've taken leadership positions in several places and are helping sort of give guidance to that community as it forms and interacts with the larger community as well.
Actually, the great thing about that is not any more than anyone else. Everyone really pitches in, because we basically, all of us have come there and invested everything we have, you know, physically, financially, spiritually, and so we feel like kind of pioneers, and we're all striving to make that project work.
Neat.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, let me ask you, before we talk about your art, has art been your vocation your whole life, or is this something, as ministry is for me, that arose later?
That's a good question. I always loved art and did a lot of it. When I was married, I found that I felt I couldn't do both. I couldn't devote myself enough to raising children and doing art, so I put the art away till my children were a certain age, and then I picked it back up. And I was taking classes here and there, and then our youngest son left home, and my husband said, "Well, what do you want to do now?" And I can still remember where I was when I realized, I of course said art, and where I was, and I realized, oh my gosh, I'm living the dream I never really dared to dream. I'm going to do it now. And now that I look back, I can see my priorities were good. Art was my second vocation. You know, raising my family is, and I was so fortunate to be able to stay home and do that. But art is what I'm to do.
Yeah. And I know Jim, your husband, supportive and has been a great,
So supportive.
a great
Yes.
help in all that.
And I was very fortunate there too, because I've seen many times when a spouse wasn't supportive and didn't agree that that's what their spouse should do, but he's been wonderful.
That's good. Well, tell us about your art and the spiritual dimensions of it. How do you connect spirit and your work in the arts, Kate?
I've been thinking a lot about that. It's so amazing to me because there are strong parallels between the way one approaches art and your Christian walk. Because when you're doing art, you're listening, you have to tune in to what you're doing. You have to tune into the piece and see what the piece is asking of you and what direction it wants to go. And it's quite like that with the Holy Spirit too. You have to be quiet and tune in and be willing to listen and take direction. So in that respect, they're quite similar. There are, of course, different opinions from different people as far as inspiration. And I just feel that as long as I'm centered, I'm going in the direction, and this is in both walks, my art walk and my walk with the Lord. As long as I'm centered, I'm taken, all things work together, and I'm taken in the right direction. We were speaking of the Heart Show that went on in Lowertown in February. It's still going on. And when I thought about doing a piece for that, it's very easy to become trite, you know, do something trite connected with the heart. And all of a sudden it came to me that I could use a real heart, which, yes, I went in search of a heart. And the whole process was so interesting, just trying to find a heart and then trying to find the right heart. And I went to all kinds of meat packers and butcher shops and packing houses, and I could not find, or slaughterhouses, I could not find a heart. And finally, way out, I believe in Mayfield, I found a place that had them. I had called, and I drove way out there, and when I got there, the only thing I could find were pig hearts. And when I got there, they had sold them. They no longer had them. And at the last minute, the man said, well, I have a beef heart. And so I thought, okay, I can go with that. Again, you know, sometimes you work with what you get. And I brought it home and started working on it. And I had one title and took it over and we hung it at the gallery. And the day before the show, I was thinking about that piece because I had done a Dear John letter and stuck a pen through the Dear John letter into the heart, and I had barbed wire. And it was about what we do to the heart. What so often how we wound each other and how we can be wounded. And I realized, I came home and I was thinking about the title, and I thought, that title's all wrong because I had named it Love Hurts. But in fact, it was what happens to the heart when we love. Love does not hurt. Love is perfect. When we love babies, they thrive. When we love the unloved, they thrive. But this heart was wounded, and so I knew that I needed to call it Love Withdrawn, because that is when the damage is done. And the most rewarding point, of course, lots of people had lots of opinions about this piece, but the most rewarding point in the show was when a woman came up to me with tears in her eyes and said, 7 years ago on Valentine's Day, I told my ex-husband that I was having an affair. And she said, this heart that you've done brought all that back, and now I see what damage I did to him. And that meant so much to me, just that one. And then there were other wonderful responses also. So it was quite a process and quite an experience.
I got goosebumps when you said that, because I think your faithfulness to that process and your quest for honesty around that, your attunement to what that really was, made something possible that might not have been possible otherwise.
And it's that same way in our walk, isn't it?
Yeah.
So many times, if we aren't seeking after something, we can be used so strongly.
That's interesting. You used a interesting word there, centering. When I'm centered, tell us a little bit about centering for you and that spiritual exercise.
I have been really going through that lately because we're building this house. A lot has gone wrong, as it does. We have a lot of other things going on. I always tell everyone, life is hard. It's the big test. It's the big challenge. And am I always sailing along smoothly? No, there are a lot of times I get frantic, and then I have to just slow down and step back and think, what are the priorities? What is going to matter in eternity? What is important? What can fall away? And that's my centering. I work in clay sometimes, and you can't do anything on the wheel until you center your clay. And then once it's centered and balanced, you can build it into whatever vessel you need to build it into. So I guess that's what I'm learning right now, how to be centered and how to step back. And a lot of times, my most successful process is getting up in the morning, and this is what works for me, getting up in the morning and just spending, even if it's 10 minutes, quietly contemplating, praying, and reading the Word, and then asking God to order my day. And if I do that, my day goes so much better. It's amazing. So I think it's that scripture, in all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will direct your paths. And I think that's my secret.
Neat.
Well, to use that image that you used before about centering the clay, you needing that to happen for that clay, God needs that to happen for you.
Exactly.
There's that marvelous metaphor of potter and clay. And in a busy culture, that's very hard. People don't feel, I think, often free to give themselves that time with God, or they're disoriented when they do, because we're used to a lot of noise and a lot of busyness, and as people, I think people hunger for that, but it is disorienting to establish a practice that is centering, because what do we do when it's quiet?
Yeah.
And it's prioritizing too, isn't it? Because so many times you think, well, I don't have time right now. I have so much today. I can't sit down for these 15 minutes or 20 minutes. But it's so important to do that. It's so important.
One of my spiritual mentors would say, I pray every morning for 30 minutes, and if I have a busy day ahead, I pray for an hour.
Oh, that's
which
so
I think
good.
is a very interesting sort of change of direction there that makes the point you're making really well.
Well, how does your faith and your walk with the Lord find expression in your work? Is it, because I'm not familiar with your work, is it more embedded, or is it maybe a little, is it readable on the surface, or is it embedded in your work?
Oh, that's such a good question. I don't know. I mean, I never set out to do something religious or to do something spiritual. And I like to leave my art open-ended so that, and I don't try to do that, but I try not to give too much information and send that person down a certain path. And I think so many times if you can do that, different people see what they need to through your art. I think that's a successful piece.
Yeah. And trust the spirit to make its meaning.
Exactly.
Doesn't it? Yeah.
Exactly.
So maybe rather than making a statement, you're asking a question. Would that
I
describe
hope
it?
that. I would love if that happens every time. I do printmaking also, and I did a print that is called Rememberings, and I had one lady tell me, "Oh, that's kind of dark. It's just two faces." But now, when I set out to do it, I was thinking about the conscience and how so many times we bring up things from the past that we haven't let go, and even sometimes that we've been forgiven for, but we try to hang on to those, or we'd love to let them go, but we haven't forgiven ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's what that piece was about. And so some people will see that. They will, and again, when we look at a piece, we're guided by the Holy Spirit so many times. He isn't limited to when we're reading the Word, or, we can be walking along and look at anything and get that impression that He wants us to have. So I hope that my pieces do ask questions or make people ask questions of themselves or of the piece. And that's a key too, that I hope people come down and look at the art in Lowertown, because there's so much to offer down there, and it doesn't matter if you know about art. Just looking at it, you start learning about art, and it's just a wonderful experience.
Yeah, I'm one of those people who I don't have a lot of experience with art. I've been a lot of art museums and that sort of thing, but I think you're exactly right. I've just in moving around Lowertown, I did most of my Christmas shopping in and around Lowertown. Just moving around there, it's very clear the pieces that reach out to me and connect with me, and also to my wife and my daughters. It's not a learned kind of thing. It's very visceral. It's very much it happens to you. It overtakes you. You don't have to know something in order for this art to speak and to grab you and to intrigue me, and it did.
That's exciting to hear.
Yeah.
That really is.
It was that way, and we had a thoroughly lovely holiday, in large measure because of all the really special things down in Lowertown.
How great.
As you're talking about that, I'm reminded of a day that I spent at a museum in Salt Lake that was, I don't remember what the show was, but it was very engaging, and I'm not schooled in art. But I love color and texture, and I like that stimulation, and it speaks to something in me, and I don't even understand it. But I must have really gone somewhere else while I was there, and I stepped out into the world, just so filled, got in my car and headed down the road and came to a light, and there was a truck ahead of me, a big truck with metal sides, and it was all rusty. And that rust was coming through the paint, and I looked at it, and it looked like a canvas to me. And part of the beauty of art and giving ourselves over to it is that I think it helps us see differently. Because if I had just come from a meeting or visiting somebody at the hospital or whatever and pulled up, I would have thought rusty old truck. But there was so much beauty in something that on another day would have just seemed old and ugly. And I wouldn't have seen it if I hadn't been kind of looking with different eyes at things that people had given themselves over to. So, I think that's what artists do, is give us a way to see
Yes, it's one of the things that Lowertown is about. At our meetings, we discuss how to reach out to people. We're not there to make. I mean, it would be lovely if we could all make a nice living, but that isn't. It can't be an artist's goal. You have to. I just was speaking to someone about this, another artist. You have to reach a point in your art where all you care about is making the art.
Right.
You have to put everything else down, and you are devoted to making the art. Whatever your views are or your goals, that's what you have to think about, and let everything else fall away. And when we talk about our group in Lowertown, when we have our artist meetings, one of our goals is to reach the public, to let them have the experience you had, and that's so fulfilling and so exciting.
Really is neat.
Well, I'm thinking too that that focus on being true to that process,
Right.
and creating, not with. I mean, you have to make a living, but that can't drive you. As you were talking about that, a person really could understand their own life in that way.
Sure.
That we are creations. That as we listen to how it is that God is trying to, create a life through us, then those other things become secondary. And I think that's very hard in this culture.
That's right.
That is so driven by, what you do and how much you make. I don't think we understand that we are we are being created.
Right. And I mean, those are such strong biblical images, this notion of submission, of surrender, of have thine own way,
Yes.
of giving yourself over to this which is larger, more complete than we are. I think that's a very fascinating connection with this spiritual life.
Yeah. Well, before we run out of time, Kate, I know you have brought a book to share, and we've been asking our guests to bring something that feeds your soul or is part of what shapes you, and so I would invite you to share briefly the book that you've brought.
Well, I haven't quite finished it. It's by Max Lucado, and it's Cure for the Common Life. And it's kind of, I started reading it thinking, and I don't even remember when I bought it, but I started reading it thinking, well, this'll be interesting. This is such an important book. This is so exciting because the whole book is about, so many times we think, well, to be effective as a Christian, I really should be doing missionary work in Uganda or something. We're not called on to save the world. That can become so overwhelming when we think, I need to save the world. No, we're called on to be spice and salt in our little corner. And if we all did that, we would be so effective. Well, what this book does is help you find out and reassure you of who you are, that you were indeed designed, that you were given gifts and how to see those gifts, and that you're great, you're perfect just like you are, and you can be used mightily just where you are. And no matter what you do, that's an important occupation.
Sure.
So it really has very common sense approaches to seeing who you are, being excited about it, and moving in that area where you've been placed. So I just love the book. I really recommend it.
Yeah, he has a great gift for taking ordinary things and making extraordinary spiritual insight out of it, doesn't he?
Yes. And this book is good for a new Christian or a Christian who's been walking with the Lord for a long, long time, because his approach is so fresh. It's very, very fresh.
Cure for the Common Life is that title.
Yeah.
Well, we have just a couple minutes. Is there something that you wanted to be sure that we heard from you? Because I think we've tossed some good questions your way.
You have. No, I feel like we've covered it. I'm so excited to be in Paducah and invite everyone to come to Lowertown and experience the art and the artists. There's so much down there where we continue to grow, and we continue to learn how to move through and in the community and for the community. And it's very rewarding, and we're all very thankful to be here.
Yeah, great variety of folks, great variety of artistic expressions, wonderful interactions. I've been, again, thrilled with my few and deep interactions down there. I've enjoyed it a whole lot.
Yeah, and I would encourage people to get on our mailing lists and be invited to the openings. They're very fun because most of the artists attend them. You know, we support each other very strongly, and it's a good opportunity to just meet everyone and kind of come into a relaxed, casual atmosphere, and it takes all the mystery out of who we are, and I think people will find we're very approachable, and art is very approachable.
Yeah. Neat. We are so thankful for your presence with us in our community, and we're thankful for your presence with us today, for the great insights you've shared and offered to us out of your art and out of your own life of faith. Thank you, Kate.
Well, thank you. I've enjoyed being here so much.
We look forward to the opening of your gallery and seeing you in all sorts of other places.
Thank you.
Well, our time has just gone by far too quickly, and thank you, Gregory. Thank you, Kate. Thank you for spending this time with us, and wherever you are, however you can, join us at Paducah Cooperative Ministry in doing God's work with human hands. Shalom.
Shalom.